Coming up, the Sky News Daily. All you need to know about one story in the news in 20 minutes. Today, Gregg Wallace and his apology to middle-class women of a certain age. Stay there. Hi all, Niall Paterson here in the Daily Studio. Over the weekend, the pressure had certainly been mounting on MasterChef host Gregg Wallace. A number of women, 13 of them in fact, complained that over a number of years he'd made lewd, sexually suggestive, completely inappropriate remarks, either to them or in their presence. His response: the allegations were only made by middle-class women of a certain age. And yet, turns out people didn't appreciate that too much. So today he's had to apologise for that initial non-apology.
I want to apologise for any offence that I caused with my post yesterday and any upset I may have caused to a lot of people. I wasn't in a good headspace when I posted it. I've been under a huge amount of stress, a lot of emotion. I felt very alone, under siege yesterday when I posted it. It's obvious to me I need to take some time out now while this investigation is underway. I hope you understand, and I do hope that you will accept this apology.
Right, so in a moment we'll be hearing from Dorothy Byrne. She was formerly head of news and current affairs at Channel 4. We actually spoke before Wallace posted his apology, but after Downing Street got dragged into the row and described his comments as inappropriate and misogynistic. Here is what Gregg Wallace said at the weekend.
I've been doing MasterChef for 20 years. Amateur, celebrity and professional MasterChef. And I think in that time I have worked with over 4,000 contestants of all different ages, all different backgrounds, all walks of life. And apparently now, I'm reading in the paper, there's been 13 complaints in that time. Now, in the newspaper, I can see the complaints coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age just from Celebrity MasterChef. This isn't right. In 20 years, over 20 years of television, can you imagine how many women, female contestants on MasterChef, have made sexual remarks or sexual innuendo? Can you imagine?
Dorothy Byrne was formerly head of news and current affairs at Channel 4, and she joins us on the Daily. What did you make of it?
Well, he claimed that it was only a small group of middle-class women of a certain age who had criticised him. Well, he is certainly of a certain age, the age of the dinosaurs, but it is not only middle-class women of a certain age or a few women who have criticised him. It is a large number of women. It's women of all ages. The idea that it's only middle-aged women who don't like rape jokes and being questioned about their sex lives and having to listen to a man talk at work about his sex life is absolute nonsense. There are no women who want to listen to Gregg Wallace talking about his sex life, whether we are rich, disadvantaged, middle-aged, young, 101. None of us want to hear you, Gregg Wallace. Thank you very much.
Was there perhaps, if we're going to be charitable here, a grain of truth in what he said, in the sense that middle-class women of a certain age have a voice, that they have a voice that they have used on this occasion, and a voice which many younger women who don't have the status of some of those who have complained about Gregg Wallace, that they could not have performed?
You are absolutely right. When I started out in television, I wasn't just harassed, I was sexually assaulted, but I was powerless because I was so new, so young, and it's even worse for young women today and young men, because today in television, the work is very insecure. There are an awful lot of very short-term contracts. There are very high levels of unemployment. I spoke out near the end of my time working full-time in television because I was the head of news and current affairs at Channel 4. so I could use my voice to help other women. So Gregg Wallace has tried to divide us as women into young versus old, middle class versus working class. But we are all united, Gregg Wallace, in thinking you're a bit of a jerk.
You have to ask, who on earth is advising Gregg Wallace in terms of the public relations?
Well, I think I know who is advising Gregg Wallace. Gregg Wallace is advising Gregg Wallace, because if he had asked a PR person, they would definitely not have told him to say that. He has also managed to insult all working class men by somehow implying that, of course, it's middle class women don't understand working class men. This is just what they're like. This is how they all talk. No, it's not. It's how they used to talk. I'm 72. I began work at 14. And I would say for the first 10 years of my working life, you really had to put up with rubbish like that all the time. But even when I entered TV at 30, it was in fact a minority of men who behaved really badly. And the trouble for Gregg Wallace is that it's not 13 complaints. It's an awful lot of complaints. And almost by the hour, we're getting more complaints. A man contacted Sky yesterday to say that he had found Gregg Wallace so disgusting that he had thought of walking off the programme.
Emma Kennedy complained back in 2012 after her appearance on the celebrity version of the show, after Gregg Wallace allegedly touched another woman's backside. She said this of him: it wasn't the act of a sexual predator, it was the act of someone who doesn't get that his conduct is inappropriate. Do you agree with that?
It is the act, or was the act, of a man who could use his great power as the presenter of a television programme to treat women any way he wanted. And he, to me, seems to have enjoyed embarrassing and humiliating women. And I regard the conduct described as harassment and bullying. And it is absolutely a misuse of power.
What has gone wrong at the BBC?
It's absolutely shocking. So here is what we have been told, that for 12 years, the BBC has been aware of complaints about Gregg Wallace, and they've gone on for 12 years. We've been told that in 2017, he was even called to a meeting with one of the most senior people, not just in the BBC, but in British television. And he was told that his conduct was unacceptable. We've heard that in 2017, there was a further dossier about him. And yet, here's what the BBC has said. We have robust processes, and behaviour of an unacceptable nature will not be tolerated. Well, BBC, what we have discovered is behaviour of an unacceptable nature is tolerated, and you do not have robust procedures. And what I would say is that it's not just about procedures. It's about the culture of an organisation. It's about a place where a man could, for more than a decade, get away with tawdry and smutty behaviour, and nothing happened to him.
You yourself rose to the highest job at Channel 4, but you look around newsrooms, you look around broadcast organisations, and whilst women are more represented than they have been, they're still not quite where they should be.
What I think has really changed in television and made things better is when women become the boss. When I started out in TV, I could never, ever have imagined that I would be the head of news and current affairs at a broadcaster. It would have been the most extraordinary thought. But today, the head of news at BBC ITV and Channel 4 are all women. And it's when you get women in positions of power that things change. But we still need more women, and we still need more diversity. But we have to get away from the idea that the male presenter is so important that he can behave as he wants.
So what does the BBC need to do immediately to sort this situation out?
They need to accept that they have failed completely as an organisation. They need to withdraw the ludicrous statement that they have robust processes and don't tolerate bad behaviour, because that statement is simply untrue. They almost certainly should suspend the episodes of MasterChef in which Gregg Wallace appears while the investigation carries on. That investigation should not just be by the production company. This is a BBC broadcast programme. It's the BBC which needs to carry out that investigation. But I believe they need to bring into the BBC an outside HR firm or some sort of organisation to look at where they've gone wrong.
Dorothy, do you think that Gregg Wallace will appear on the BBC again?
No, I don't. And he shouldn't. And he shouldn't appear on television again. He can have his own channel. Look, he has all his Instagram followers, and presumably he hopes that they share his outdated, prejudiced views. But he shouldn't be on a mainstream broadcaster, no.
Welcome back. Now, as often happens, things change, a story moves whilst I'm actually sitting here in the studio. Today, we were about to speak to Philippa Childs, head of the Media and Entertainment Industry Union, Bectu, when my producer noticed Gregg Wallace had posted that apology.
I want to apologise for any offence that I caused with my post yesterday and any upset I may have caused to a lot of people. I wasn't in a good headspace when I posted it. I've been under a huge amount of stress, a lot of emotion. I felt very alone, under siege yesterday when I posted it. It's obvious to me I need to take some time out now while this investigation is underway. I hope you understand, and I do hope that you will accept this apology.
Philippa, lovely to have you with us. What do you make of it?
Well, I'm pleased. It's good that he has apologised and said that he wants to take some time out. I think that probably is wise at this point. I mean, it's never a good thing to do to jump to one's own defence, and probably at this point, silence is the best strategy.
But for him to say that he feels alone, that he feels stressed, that he feels under siege, I wonder how many of those words could have been used by the women who've made complaints against him.
Well, precisely. The reality is that our members who have worked with him and have subsequently decided to make complaints, albeit anonymously, will have felt all of those things. They'll have felt very vulnerable in terms of their future careers. They'll have felt very alone in terms of, is this just me? Am I just being oversensitive, reacting to some of these behaviours?
Complaints have been made of Gregg Wallace practically for the duration of his 20-year career. I mean, as head of Bectu, were you aware of allegations being made against him?
I have certainly become aware in the last weeks and months that he is one of those, not the only one, I hasten to add, but one of those serial offenders who has been the subject of lots of discussion amongst our members about his behaviours. And this is what has happened, that freelancers have felt that they're safe to talk to their own colleagues, people who are in a similar position to them, about behaviours that they've experienced on productions, but they have felt very nervous in terms of reporting that either to a production company or to a broadcaster, unfortunately. The thing about the creative industries is that you do have these huge power imbalances. You have people who are on screen, who are very famous and therefore very powerful. And then you have such a reliance on freelance workforce across the creative industries that you have people who feel like they have no power because they're really worried about where is their next job coming from? Are they going to be branded as a troublemaker? Will they be effectively blacklisted? So I think that is at the root of the problem.
But we're in the 21st century now, Philippa. The creative industries have been here before. In fact, I go so far as to say the creative industries have been here time and time and time again, and nothing seems to change.
It is so frustrating. I mean, I become enraged every time there is a new scandal and a new story because it feels to me that every few months I'm talking about these situations, whether it be Hugh Edwards or Russell Brand and now Gregg Wallace. So I really don't want to be in a situation where this just continues. I think what we've all got to do across the industry is come to a point where we put in place all of the building blocks that provide freelancers with a structure in which they can feel able to report that they do get the necessary support that they need, and that we really do stamp out these behaviours. And people come to realise that if they're working in television, there are certain standards that they have to behave towards.
Clearly, these are not issues that are limited solely to the BBC, but it does seem that the organisation suffers from them worse than anyone else. I mean, is that your view?
No, I think that all broadcasters and organisations across the industry suffer equally. I think what the BBC is suffering from at the moment is a number of historical cases that are coming forward that have been long-standing. I do actually believe that both the Director General, Tim Davie, and the Chairman are absolutely committed to trying to work to stamp this out. So the Chairman has introduced his own culture review within the BBC, and Tim Davie has certainly been encouraging all staff to come forward if they have examples of bad behaviour. So I think the commitment is there. I think there is probably a question around, are there too many places where people might complain to? So do they need just one central reporting mechanism to ensure that they pick everything up? And I guess that's why I'm arguing that the Creative Industries Independent Standards Authority is such an important thing, because they will be able to log calls and will be able to take down details of serial offenders.
Just to be absolutely clear, Philippa, this was a programme that was made by an independent production house. It was not made in-house, as they say, at the BBC. But that does not change the level of responsibility that the BBC owes to people who appear on its programmes, does it?
Yes, you're right. That is another factor in terms of why this is so challenging, I think, for broadcasters, that they commission production companies to make their programs, and whatever safeguards that they think they've put in place, whatever expectations they put in the contracts about behaviours on their productions, they can't be there all day, every day. And I think there is equally probably a fear in the production of disrupting the production, the timetable or whatever, if something happens. And so there is a bit of a tendency to just move on and not deal with behaviours that really should be dealt with in real time. And I think just some of those comments that Gregg Wallace did make about middle class women of a certain age, that certainly chimed with me, as you might imagine. And it clearly chimed with lots of women broadcasters and, well, lots of men as well, actually. I think that that continues to be a challenge for the industry. We see lots of men of a certain age on our screens. And yet, I think there are still some double standards around women in TV.
Philippa Childs, head of Bectu. Great to have you with us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Gregg Wallace has, for the time being at least, stepped away from the filming of MasterChef. He maintains that the complaints have been exaggerated and that his actions do not amount to sexual harassment. In response to the story, a BBC source said this: "While we are not going to comment on individuals or any internal HR processes, particularly when there is an ongoing process in place being run by Banerjee, who have the direct contractual relationship with Gregg Wallace, it would be wrong to report the BBC has done nothing if or when matters have been raised with us, not least because it is already being widely reported there were interventions in both 2017 and 2018 where action was taken. For its part, Banijay UK, the production company behind MasterChef, has confirmed it's appointed law firm Lewis Silkin to lead an investigation into Wallace's alleged behaviour. We have put Dorothy Byrne's specific claims to Gregg Wallace's management team and will include their response in the notes attached to the podcast. But that is your lot for this edition of The Daily. We're back again tomorrow.